I do not understand why you're crying, Mom. The papers are already signed. Those were the words my oldest son said to me. Even now, 2 years later, I can still hear them. I was 75 years old that morning. I was standing in the kitchen of the house where I had lived for 48 years. The same kitchen where I packed school lunches, the same kitchen where I baked birthday cakes, the same kitchen where I stood at the sink and watched my children play in the backyard when they were little. And somehow, without my knowledge, that house was no longer mine. My name is Evelyn Harper. I am 75 years old, and this is the story of how my own children sold my house without telling me. Maybe you have felt something like this too. Not the loss of a house, the loss of trust. Sometimes that hurts much more. I lived in a quiet town in Ohio. My husband Walter and I bought our home in 1976. It was not fancy, it was not large, but it was ours. Walter worked as an electrician. I worked as a librarian for nearly 30 years. We raised 3 children there: Michael, Susan, and Daniel. Every scratch on the floor had a memory attached to it. Every room held a piece of our lives. When Walter passed away 12 years ago, the house became even more important to me. It was the last place where I could still feel him. His favorite chair remained near the window. His tools were still organized in the garage. Sometimes I would sit quietly in the evening and almost imagine I could hear him walking down the hallway. I know that sounds foolish, but when you lose someone after 50 years of marriage, little things become precious. The years after Walter's death were lonely. My children visited less and less. At first, they called every week, then every few weeks, then whenever they remembered. I tried not to complain. They had their own lives, their own families, their own responsibilities. At least that is what I kept telling myself. Most evenings, I ate dinner alone. I would watch television for a while and then go to bed. The house was quiet, too quiet. Sometimes I would stare out the kitchen window long after sunset. Sometimes I would listen for sounds that never came. At this age, silence feels louder. A few years ago, my health started changing. Nothing serious, just the normal things that come with age. My knees hurt, my balance was not as good. I moved slower. My children suddenly became very interested in my future. At first, I thought they were worried about me. Now I know better. Michael started bringing up assisted living facilities. Susan talked about retirement communities. Daniel mentioned downsizing. Every conversation somehow returned to my house. Mom, this place is too much work. Mom, you should think about selling. Mom, you cannot manage this forever. I always gave them the same answer: no. Not because I was stubborn, because I loved my home. I still paid my bills. I still cooked my meals. I still cared for my garden. Why would I leave? The discussions continued for months, then years. Sometimes they were gentle, sometimes they were pushy, but I never changed my mind. One Sunday afternoon, they all came to visit together. That should have been my first warning. Normally, they arrived separately. Seeing all 3 at once surprised me. We sat around the dining room table, the same table where countless family dinners had happened. The same table Walter built with his own hands. Michael cleared his throat. Mom, we need to talk. Those words immediately made me nervous. I remember gripping my coffee cup a little tighter. Susan smiled, but it felt forced. Daniel avoided looking at me. Something was wrong. I could feel it. Michael began explaining that they were worried about my health. Then he started talking about financial planning, then estate planning, then legal protection. The conversation sounded prepared, almost rehearsed. I remember feeling confused. Finally, Susan slid a stack of papers across the table. "These are just precautionary documents." I looked at them. The print was small, the language was complicated. I hated legal paperwork. Walter always handled those things when he was alive. "What exactly are these?" I asked. Susan answered quickly. "Just documents that help us assist you if something happens." I should have read every page. I know that now. But I trusted my children. Why wouldn't I? I had spent my entire life protecting them, loving them, sacrificing for them. The idea that they would ever hurt me seemed impossible. I signed. Not everything, only some pages. And after that day, life seemed normal. Months passed. Nothing appeared different. The children visited occasionally. I continued living in my home. I watered my flowers. I attended church. I met friends for coffee. Everything seemed fine. Then, one Tuesday morning, everything changed. I was making toast when someone knocked on my front door. I opened it. A young couple stood there. They looked excited. The woman held a folder. The man smiled. "Good morning," he said. "We just wanted to introduce ourselves before moving in next month." I stared at him. Moving in? I thought perhaps they had the wrong address. "I'm sorry," I said. "I think you're mistaken." The couple exchanged confused looks. The woman opened her folder. Then she said something that made my heart stop. "No, ma'am, we purchased this property last week." For a moment, I could not breathe. I thought I had heard her incorrectly. Purchased? What property? She smiled politely. "This house." I felt the floor disappear beneath me. My hands started shaking. The young couple immediately noticed. The woman looked concerned. "Are you okay?" I could barely speak. "This house isn't for sale." The man's expression changed, slowly, uncomfortably. Then he showed me paperwork. And there it was, my address, my home, sold, legally transferred, completed. I remember closing the door. I remember locking it, then sliding down against the wall. I sat on the floor and cried harder than I had cried since Walter died. An hour later, I called my children, every one of them. No answer, not a single one. By evening, Michael finally called back. His voice sounded calm, too calm, as if nothing unusual had happened, as if my entire world had not just collapsed. I asked him one question, only one. "Michael, what have you done?" There was a long silence, and then he gave me the answer that changed everything. "Mom, we thought this was best for everyone." "Mom, we thought this was best for everyone." I sat at my kitchen table, holding the phone so tightly that my hand hurt. For a moment, I could not even speak. I looked around the room. The curtains I had sewn myself 20 years earlier, the family photographs on the wall, Walter's old coffee mug sitting beside the sink. Everything suddenly felt fragile, like it was already disappearing. "What do you mean?" I finally asked. Michael sighed, the way people sigh when they think they're explaining something obvious. "We talked about this for years." "No," I said quietly. "You talked about it." I said no. Another silence. Then he spoke again. "The house sold for a very good price." Sold. He kept saying the word as if it belonged to him, as if it was his decision to make, as if the house was not mine. I felt something breaking inside me. Not anger, not yet. Something deeper, something sadder. The realization that my own children no longer saw me as a person capable of making decisions. They saw me as a problem, a responsibility, an obstacle. "How did you sell my house?" I asked. This time his voice became cautious. "You signed the documents." My stomach dropped. Immediately, I remembered the papers on the dining room table. The papers Susan had called precautionary. The papers I had trusted. The papers I had signed without understanding. A cold feeling moved through my chest. "What documents?" Michael hesitated. Then he said words I will never forget. "The power of attorney papers." I felt sick, completely sick. I stood up too quickly and had to grab the counter for balance. "No, Mom, no!" My voice came out stronger this time. "I never agreed to sell my house. You agreed to let us manage things if you couldn't. I can manage things." His silence said everything. In his mind, I could not. At 75, my children had already decided who I was. Old, confused, unable. The conversation ended badly, very badly. I hung up before I said something I would regret. Then I sat alone in my living room until midnight. The house was completely silent. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Every sound seemed larger than usual. I kept thinking about Walter. What would he have done? What would he have said? The truth was simple. Walter would never have allowed this. Never. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I called Susan. She answered immediately, almost as if she had been expecting my call. "Mom?" She sounded nervous. Good. I wanted her nervous. "Tell me exactly what happened." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she began explaining. The story sounded polished, prepared, practiced. According to Susan, they were only trying to help. They worried about my health. They worried about my safety. They worried about the maintenance costs. They worried about the future. Everything sounded reasonable, almost, except for one thing. None of it explained why they never told me. None of it explained why strangers had to inform me that my house had been sold. When I asked that question, Susan became quiet. Then she finally admitted it. "We knew you would say no." I closed my eyes. There it was, the truth. Simple, clear, painful. They did not tell me because they did not want my opinion. They wanted my signature. Those are very different things. Maybe you understand this feeling. When someone smiles at you while taking something away from you, that kind of betrayal stays with you. For days, I could barely function. I wandered through the house touching things. The banister Walter installed, the bookshelf we built together, the kitchen cabinets we painted one summer. Every corner held memories. Every room reminded me of a different season of life. Michael learning to ride a bicycle, Susan practicing piano, Daniel running through the hallway after school, Christmas mornings, birthday parties, family dinners, arguments, laughter, life. All of it happened inside those walls, and now it belonged to strangers. A week later, all 3 children arrived together. Again, just like before. This time, they were not smiling. They looked uncomfortable. We sat in the living room. No one touched the coffee I made. Michael spoke first. "We found a nice retirement community." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I could not believe what I was hearing. My house had been sold, my life had been rearranged, and now they wanted me to be grateful. Susan handed me a brochure. Beautiful buildings, landscaped gardens, happy elderly people smiling at each other. It looked like an advertisement, not a home. Not my home. We already paid the deposit, Daniel said. I stared at him. You already what? He immediately looked down. Nobody answered. Because they knew. They all knew. They had crossed every boundary possible. I slowly placed the brochure on the table. Then I asked a question. One simple question. When did any of you ask what I wanted? Nobody spoke. Not one of them. That silence told me everything. The meeting ended shortly afterward. They left. I stayed. Alone. Again. A few days later, I met my friend Margaret for lunch. Margaret was 78, a retired nurse, widowed like me. She had known me for almost 30 years. The moment she saw my face, she knew something was wrong. What happened? I told her everything, every detail, every painful detail. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she sat quietly for a long time. Then she asked one question. Evelyn, have you spoken to a lawyer? I blinked. A lawyer? Honestly, the thought had never crossed my mind. These were my children, not criminals, not strangers, my children. Margaret leaned forward. Being family doesn't make something right. Those words stayed with me for days. I replayed them over and over. Being family doesn't make something right. The following week, I found myself sitting in the office of an attorney named Richard Bennett. He was probably in his early 60s, calm, professional, direct. He listened carefully as I explained everything. He reviewed copies of the documents. He asked questions, lots of questions. When he finished reading, he removed his glasses and looked at me. His expression had changed. I noticed immediately. Mrs. Harper, he said carefully, did anyone fully explain these documents before you signed them? No. Did anyone tell you your house could be sold? No. He nodded slowly. Then he opened a file, and what he said next changed the direction of my entire life. Because if what you're telling me is accurate, your children may have made a very serious mistake. Because if what you're telling me is accurate, your children may have made a very serious mistake. For the first time in weeks, I felt something besides grief, hope, small, fragile, but real. I sat a little straighter in my chair. What kind of mistake? I asked. Attorney Bennett folded his hands on the desk. A power of attorney gives someone authority to act on your behalf, but it does not give them unlimited freedom to ignore your wishes. I listened carefully. Every word mattered. He continued, if they knew you clearly opposed selling the house, and if they failed to properly inform you about what they were doing, there may be legal issues. My heart started beating faster. I had spent weeks feeling powerless, weeks feeling like my life had been taken away. Now, for the first time, someone was telling me I still had rights. Someone was treating me like an adult, not a burden, not a problem, not an old woman who could simply be pushed aside. An adult, a person, a homeowner, a mother, a widow, a human being. When I left his office that afternoon, the world looked different. The sun seemed brighter. The air felt lighter. Nothing had actually changed yet, but something inside me had. I stopped feeling defeated and started paying attention. Over the next several weeks, Attorney Bennett and his team investigated everything. Every document, every signature, every transfer, every communication. The more information they uncovered, the more concerned they became. Apparently, my children had been discussing the sale long before I ever signed those papers. Emails existed, messages existed, plans existed, conversations existed, all without my knowledge. That hurt almost as much as the sale itself. Not because of the money was never the issue. The betrayal was. While the legal review continued, I stayed in the house. The buyers had not moved in yet. Complications were delaying everything. I spent those weeks walking from room to room, not mourning anymore, observing, thinking, remembering. One evening, I stood in Walter's workshop. His old tools still hung on the wall. His workbench remained exactly where he left it. I ran my fingers across the worn wood surface, and suddenly I remembered something he used to say. People show you who they are when money enters the room. At the time, I never thought much about it. Now I understood. Sometimes it is not greed. Sometimes it is control. Sometimes people convince themselves they are helping when they are really taking away someone else's choices. A month later, Attorney Bennett called. "Evelyn, I think you should come in." His voice sounded serious. My stomach tightened immediately. The next morning, I drove to his office. When I arrived, he handed me several documents. Then he explained everything. The sale itself had created legal complications because important disclosures and authorizations were being questioned. The buyers had been informed. The title company had been informed. Multiple parties were now reviewing the transaction. The situation had become much bigger than my children expected. Far bigger. I sat quietly while he talked. Then he looked directly at me. "What do you want to do?" Nobody had asked me that question in a very long time. Not my children, not anyone. What do you want? Such simple words, yet they nearly made me cry. I looked out the office window. Then I answered honestly. "I want my voice back." Attorney Bennett smiled, and for the first time in months, I smiled too. The following weeks were difficult, very difficult. The children learned about the legal challenge. They were furious. Michael called repeatedly. Susan left emotional messages. Daniel sent long texts. None of them apologized. Not at first. Instead, they insisted they were helping me. Helping. That word again. I noticed something interesting. Every conversation focused on their intentions, not my feelings, not my wishes, not my rights, only their intentions. Eventually, I stopped answering immediately. For the first time in my life, I created boundaries. Healthy boundaries, painful boundaries, necessary boundaries. Maybe you have learned this lesson too. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the people we love most. And sometimes loving them does not mean allowing them to control us. Several months later, a mediation meeting was scheduled. All 3 children attended. So did their attorneys. So did mine. We sat around a large conference table. The atmosphere felt heavy. No one smiled. No one made small talk. For a long time, everyone discussed documents, timelines, signatures, and procedures. Then something unexpected happened. Attorney Bennett turned toward me. "Evelyn, would you like to say something?" The buyers were compensated and moved on to another property. The transaction was eventually unwound, and my house remained mine. I remember the morning Attorney Bennett called with the final confirmation. I was standing in my kitchen making coffee. The same kitchen, the same house, the same window overlooking my backyard. When he told me the news, I sat down at the table and cried. Not because I had won, because I had been heard. There is a difference. At 75 years old, I learned something important. Sometimes the greatest victory is not getting what you want. It is knowing your voice still matters. The weeks that followed were awkward. Very awkward. My children wanted to fix things immediately. Life does not work that way. Trust does not return overnight. Broken trust is like a cracked piece of glass. You can repair it, but you will always know where the crack once was. Michael began visiting every Sunday. Not because he needed paperwork signed, not because he wanted to discuss finances, just to visit. At first, our conversations were uncomfortable. We talked about the weather, sports, the neighbors, anything except what happened. But slowly things changed. One Sunday afternoon, while we sat on the back porch, he finally said something I had waited months to hear. "I'm sorry, Mom." Just those 3 words, simple, honest, no excuses, no explanations, no justifications. "I'm sorry." I looked at him for a long moment, then I nodded. Life slowly settled into a new rhythm. Something else changed too. Me. For years after Walter died, I had been waiting for phone calls, waiting for visits, waiting for life to happen. After everything that occurred, I stopped waiting. I started living again. I joined a community book club. I began volunteering at the local library. I started taking painting classes despite having absolutely no artistic talent. The first painting looked terrible. The second looked worse, but I enjoyed every minute of it. I made new friends, good friends, people who saw me as Evelyn, not someone's mother, not someone's responsibility, just Evelyn. One afternoon, Margaret and I sat together drinking coffee. The same friend who first told me to speak with a lawyer. She smiled and said, "You seem different." I thought about that. She was right. I was different, stronger. Not because of what my children had done, because of what I had done afterward. I had stood up for myself. At 75. Many people believe personal growth belongs to the young. I disagree. Sometimes the most important lessons arrive late, very late. Years later, my family relationships remain imperfect. Whose family is perfect? Not mine, not yours, not anyone's. But they are honest now, and honesty is worth more than comfort. Last Christmas, all 3 children came to my house. We ate dinner around Walter's old table. The grandchildren laughed. The television played quietly in the background. Someone burned the dinner rolls. Someone spilled gravy. Someone told the same story twice. It felt wonderfully normal. At one point, I looked around the room, at my children, at my grandchildren, at the home that almost slipped away, and I felt something unexpected. Peace. Not because the past disappeared, because I survived it, because I learned from it, because I discovered that growing older does not mean surrendering your voice. If there is one lesson I would share with anyone listening, it is this. Age does not erase your right to choose. Love does not require obedience. Family does not mean ownership. And dignity does not expire. Maybe you have felt invisible at some point in your life. Maybe someone made decisions for you instead of with you. Maybe someone assumed your voice no longer mattered. If so, please remember this. Your voice matters. Your choices matter. You matter. No matter your age, no matter what anyone says. At 75, I almost lost my home. But the truth is, I found something far more valuable. I found myself. And that made all the difference.